Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. We're a podcast about board games where we have opinions and conclusions formed on the basis of incomplete information. This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is brought to you by these great Saskatoon businesses. Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street, Dragon's Den Games on 8th Street, and Breakout Escape Rooms on Faithful Avenue. Hey there, how's it going, eh? This is Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday, and this is a special weekly episode where a bunch of us content creators come together and let you know what we've been playing recently. And my cold's getting better. I don't sound like I'm talking out of a fishbowl. So, on this episode, Board on the Air. Definitely a board game podcast. Mozart Games. Dice and Dragons. The Meeple Dungeon. Meeple and the Moose. All games new and old. And Cardboard Conjecture. And, like I always say, have a look at the show notes, check out the links to the cast, and enjoy the episode.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Jordan.
And we are Board on the Air, a weekly radio show in Saskatoon, and this is What Have You Been Playing? On tonight's show, we are going to talk about
Dice Theme Park, a 1 to 4 player game by Alley Cat Gaming Designs.
Alley Cat Games. Designer Adrian Adamescu and Daryl Andrews. Art by Sabrina Miramon. This is a sequel of sorts to Dice Hospital.
Yeah, you can see a few of the similarities between the two, but it does them in a different way.
Not the same designer, same artist, so it has the same look to it. Daryl Andrews and Adrian Adamescu are probably most famous for Sagrada, and I believe they're both working on the new Sagrada campaign game.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. In this game, your patrons are dice.
Yeah, you have 3 different patrons. They all like their own certain style of
ride or event.
Like, you have your green, yellow, and blue. The blue are pretty relaxed. They like their duck ponds, that sort of stuff. The yellow is thrill seekers. They like their roller coasters and all that sort of stuff. And the green people like to go into haunted mansions.
Okay, I got none of that from playing the game.
If you look at the art, that's what it's for, but
yeah, it's a pretty game. But I didn't read any of the flavor text. I didn't look at what the game or what the rides and different things were. It was the mechanic to me is what I was looking at. That's not to say it wasn't thematic. I just didn't see the theme.
You never look hard for theme.
No,
if it's punching you in the face, you'll see it. But
yeah, I'm a pretty shallow gamer where I look at looks, but don't really care about the theme.
Yeah. So, on your turn, before everyone does anything, everyone plays 2 cards. They're going to give you income and give you some special abilities for that round, and decide turn order based on a dice value in the top left, ranging from 7 to nothing.
Yeah,
in the Kickstarter edition.
It has a little bit of that Mission Red Planet, Libertalia card play in it.
Yeah. After you decide your turn order, first player gets to take the first of the monorails that has the dice coming to your park and puts them into their home area.
Yeah. In Dice Hospital, these dice were random. This one has specific numbers that come out each time.
Yeah. And it makes a little bit more sense with this one because if you have a 2, it's very hard to get much out of that dice.
Yeah, I thought it made the game a little bit more consistent. Not that Dice Hospital wasn't consistent, but you could get the wrong dice a lot in Dice Hospital, and you were struggling.
If someone didn't roll well, everyone could get 2s.
Yeah, exactly.
After you do that, you then can buy mascots and bonus area, like not areas.
More rides, basically.
Yeah.
So similar to Dice Theme Park, or Dice
Dice
Hospital. Well, Dice Hospital, you had the choice of one or the other. This one, you could do both.
But you had to pay for them instead.
Yeah, there was a cost where Dice Hospital, you just took them.
Yeah, and the rides, again, tell you what you need to do to activate them, which is opposite of Dice Hospital, where you can activate them at any point, but you don't have to worry about... Well, they still need to have the requirements met, but you don't have to have them on that thing.
Yeah, it's still color dice per color ride, where it was color specialist for the other one. There's a spatial puzzle of moving your dice around in this one.
And mascots in this game are not the... they're different than the specialists in the other game, where specialists, you put them down and they have a special effect. The mascots still have that special effect, but they don't do as much.
Yeah, I would say they're just to help you mitigate your dice.
Yeah.
For the most part.
After you do that, you can buy map tokens and upgrade your parks with merchandise areas.
Each of your rides has 1 to 2 spaces where you can add upgrades to, and they're either adding money when you activate it, adding an extra victory point or 2 when you activate it,
or just getting more activations.
Each tile, in general, can be activated once, unless you have an upgrade on it.
Yeah.
And the most that any ride per round will be activated is twice, except when you use the special cards that give you a 3rd turn.
Or 4th.
Or 4th turn.
After you do that, then you do your activation. So you will say, I'm activating this tile. You say, okay, I have this green dice at a 6, and it needs any dice. I turn that 6 to a 5, and then I have to move it to one adjacent tile, and I then continue from there.
Yeah, basically the cost of using a die on a ride is a pip. When it gets down to 1, they get removed from the game, and they go home, basically.
Yeah, it's their excitement is the pip value, as I read, I think.
Okay.
But you're more beneficial using your ones than leaving your ones in your park.
Yes.
Because the ones will always leave, but if you use them, they go away anyway.
Yeah. If you ever turn or use a 1, it goes to a 0, which doesn't exist, so then it leaves. Where if you leave a 1 on your board at the end of the next round, you do a cleanup phase, which gets rid of them.
Yeah, so you get more benefit out of using the ones than keeping the ones.
Yeah. I would say this game was a little bit thinkier than Dice Hospital. The same logistical type puzzle where you're trying to optimize your activations and your specialists and those types of things.
To get as much done as you can.
Yeah, to get as much done as many points. And you score more points in this game.
One thing I will say is it doesn't feel as tight as Dice Hospital, where in Dice Hospital you have set amount of spaces for dice. In this one, you can have all the dice you want.
Well, it's not as penalizing, right? There's not that penalty of people dying or getting sicker, that type of idea.
Yeah.
It's just using those die and keeping die coming into your theme park. I was able to keep my dice moving throughout the game, so when I finished, I had a whole bunch of dice left on my board.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I had no dice.
Yeah, exactly. To me, this was a great game. I'm looking forward to playing it more. I thought the spatial puzzle, I thought the way the pips counted down and the way you could use your specialist, your mascots to upgrade those, and how everybody had a special ability. There's lots of asymmetry to it, and the more stuff you put into your park, the more
stuff you get out.
More asymmetry that happens.
Yeah.
You score way more points, as I said.
Yeah, we all scored well over 100.
Yeah. All in all, a great follow-up to Dice Hospital from Alley Cat. Same great production with their Kickstarter edition, which Shea got. And yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
For sure. Okay, I'm David.
And I'm Jordan.
And we will talk to you next week.
Hi, This is Royce from Definitely a Board Game Podcast, a podcast definitely about board games, except when it isn't. Today I'd like to talk about a game based on a TV show. Alright, let's be fair, games based on TV shows are often problematic. At one time, it was even considered like a death knell for quality. But in recent years, IP-based games have gotten better. They're not only often great games, but they're usually a lot of fun. Oof, but what about games based on a TV show reboot? Yeah, TV show reboots. TV show reboots are always a gamble. I mean, for every Battlestar Galactica, there's a Knight Rider 2000. For every Doctor Who, there's a 90210, or a Dallas, or a Dynasty, or a Melrose Place, or a Charmed, or the friggin' awful new Twin Peaks. But I digress. Today I'd like to talk about a game based on a TV show reboot that, I'll be honest, blew the doors off the original. That's right, it's
My Little Pony, My Little Pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be, until you all shared its magic with me. Big adventure, tons of fun, a beautiful heart, faithful and strong. Sharing kindness, it's an easy feat, and magic makes it all complete. You have mine. Do you know you are my very best friends?
My Little Pony Adventures in Equestria by Renegade Games. I'm going to bet you didn't see that one coming. I'll be the first to admit, I actually really enjoyed the Friendship is Magic TV show. I don't know if that makes me a brony, kind of hope not, but it was a fun show. It included regular guest star John Delancey, who's amazing in everything, and because of the show, I was kind of excited to get the My Little Pony deck builder. I'll start by saying this deck builder is a co-op, and I don't love co-op games. But this is a very well thought out co-op, and it has a lot more depth than you would expect based on the theme. It has 3 primary resources, as well as 3 secondary resources. It has the primary card lineup that you would expect in any deck building game, but it also has the changing landscape of Ponyville locations, where you can move your character around to complete special tasks that you will then complete to get bonuses and resources. To win the game, you're going to need to defeat a series of hurdles. Each hurdle is taken from an event in the show, often a first act or second act conflict that the friends have to defeat. And then after you defeat the hurdles in the game, just like in the show, you will then go on to meet the big confrontation at the end. Sometimes this is an end of episode big bad, but sometimes it's like an end of season big bad, which is really kind of neat. All while battling a cloudy skies mechanic. This mechanism actually works as like a timer for the game, and it effectively puts pressure on the players to work together and win the game. If it gets too cloudy, ultimately, they'll lose automatically. Alright, let's start with the positive. My Little Pony is a very good game. It's thematic, it's fun, it does something different from other deck builders, it does something I haven't seen before, and I really, really enjoyed my play. My only complaint? I kind of wish they put a point value system on the cards, sort of like DC deck building does, so they could have had a competitive variant. Again, I'm not a huge fan of co-ops. From a rules perspective, it would have been a very easy thing to do, and the individual card values, yeah, they would have taken a little work to balance, but it could have been done very simply. Then again, I suppose having the ponies compete to claiming ultimate victory over their so-called friends probably would have been a little bit off-brand. So anyway, if you're interested in a fun, surprisingly deep co-op deck builder, then you could do worse than taking the roles of Twilight Sparkle, Applejack, and of course, Pinkie Pie, and playing My Little Pony Adventures in Equestria. My name is Royce from Definitely a Board Game Podcast. If you're interested in hearing more from me and from my special guests, you can find the Definitely a Board Game Podcast wherever podcasts live. And you can always reach out to me personally at definitelyboard@gmail.com. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a very happy Wednesday.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris Morris from Mozart Games, and I am thrilled to be back again on Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday this week. If you want to give me a follow on Twitter, you can find me on there as SpiderMo. That's Spider with a Y. I'll often post pics of games that I've been playing, some of my ongoing challenges as a designer, and a few rants and raves along the way. On this week's episode, I want to discuss a couple of games that I recently played for the first time at Shucks in Vancouver during the first week of October. Now, for anybody not familiar with Shucks, it's the Shut Up and Sit Down convention that's hosted in Vancouver, BC. And it's a con that's focused on actually playing games as well as fun panels and lots of inclusiveness. The selling portion that is rampant at most gaming conventions takes a back seat, and it really gives this one a much more welcoming atmosphere. I was there early on Thursday to assist in setting up the convention and the game library, and while doing so, I was talking to one of the Paragon volunteers who told me about a game called Detective Club and how she really enjoyed playing it. I'd seen it before but knew nothing about it, and when she described it as Dixit meets a fake artist goes to New York, I was immediately hooked and knew that I wanted to give it a try at some point during the weekend. Detective Club is designed by Alexander Nevsky, the same person who did Mysterium, and this was originally published in 2018. It uses large tarot-sized cards depicting various pieces of art that are all very abstract and usually feature a lot of images within, much like games of Dixit or Mysterium. The game takes place over a series of rounds, depending on the number of players in the game. In each round, one person will be the active player, who will look through their hand of cards and choose two that they're going to be using for this round. They will then write a single word on all of the notepads that are provided, but will leave one intentionally blank. Then they turn the notepads upside down, shuffle them up, and each other player will take one at random. The person who has the blank notebook is called the conspirator, and all the other players are detectives. Once each player has their notepad, the active player will play one of their cards down to the table for all to see that matches their word. All the other players will then take it in turn to play one of their cards, trying to do the same. Obviously, the conspirator has no idea what the word is, so they have to guess by what others have been playing down. Once all players have played two cards, the active player reveals what the word was, and all the players then have to explain why they chose the two cards that they played. The conspirator has to try to bluff their way through, trying to tie their cards to the word revealed. Then all players vote on who they think is the conspirator, and players gain points depending on how the voting turned out. I found this to be a fun change to some of the previous games of this concept, and it works extremely well in larger player counts. It was also a super fun convention game, with a lot of laughs shared around our table throughout. It plays quick, and everybody had a great time playing it. I can definitely recommend Detective Club if you're looking for a lighter party game. The other game is called Moonbase, which is a two-player abstract game by designer Naotoka Shimamoto, and was released in 2019. It takes place over 6 rounds, and players will take turns placing rings of 2 different sizes on craters that are printed on the board. The color of the rings match both players, and there's a third neutral color as well. Players are essentially trying to get their rings to stack on top of others of their color, while their opponent is trying to block them from doing so. At the end of each round, if there is a large ring in your color that is not covered by another ring, then you can place one of your resource hexes in it, which will score you 2 points at game end. If a player is unable to do so, they then get to place a residential hex instead, scoring a single point. You can place multiple resource hexes in one round if there's opportunity to do so. There's also a mobile research building that can be placed in a large ring of your color if it's placed on top of both of your opponent's ring and the third neutral color, which scores you 3 points at the end of the game if you still have it in your ring. There's a bunch of other placement restrictions and a couple of other ways to score at game end that keeps things close. The rings are also stacked up in random piles at the beginning of the game, so when drafting rings at the start of each round, you never know exactly what you're going to get, and it's a tough choice each round as to whether to grab your own rings or 1 or 2 of your opponents in order to hinder their plans. Moonbase plays pretty quickly, and it looks really great on the table. It's super rewarding to be able to block your opponent from an ideal location, and players often have to think a turn or 2 in advance in order to do well. This was a fun game that I played at the end of the night with a friend of mine, and we both had a lot of fun trying to build the best Moonbase we could. The components are all super cool and have a great feel to them, and while the game looks super simple at first glance, there's a lot going on during the game. I love the fact that the publisher used rings instead of discs for the player pieces, as it provides a more unique experience, and it also allows the scoring pieces to sit inside of them instead of on top, which allows for a lot of strategy when trying to cover up opponents' pieces. It is a tough game to track down, but if you like abstract games, Moonbase is a great option that doesn't really compare to anything else that I've played recently. Thanks for listening to my thoughts on a couple of games that I played at Shucks, and I'll return in another episode to talk about a few others that I played that I really enjoyed as well. Once again, I'm Chris Morris, and may all of your dice rolls be critical successes.
What up, gamers? I'm Jayson.
I'm Julie, and together we're Dice and Dragons, and you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram at Dice and Dragons, and on Twitter at Dice and Dragon.
And what is it today, Julie?
Is it What You've Been Playing Wednesdays?
It is, and this is a little bit of a different type of recording. We kind of got desynced with the rest of the show for a couple reasons, and today we're going to be talking about Power Rangers Zeo Stronger Than Before. This is the first standalone core box or expansion, it can be both, for the Power Rangers deck building game by Renegade Game Studios, designed by Matt Hyra and T.C. Petty III. Now, Julie, what did you think of this core box? You actually kicked my butt in the last core box. I didn't win a game, and I know you enjoyed it actually more than me, which is surprising as it's a Power Rangers game.
Yeah, but it's a deck builder, and you don't have as much patience for deck builders. So
I have plenty of patience for deck builders. I don't have patience when things kind of just start unraveling, or I can't get a single draw.
So these Rangers have a couple of cool new cards, and I did enjoy. I was able to build up my Zord, and I had a card that allowed me to kind of reset them all the time, and I kind of got to beat up on you quite a bit again. So that was fun. The game seemed particularly long, though, but...
Yeah, we definitely didn't play the start of the game very well, or it was just one of the games where we were able to ramp and build. But it did lead to the game being longer than we thought it would be, especially as what I'd heard about the Zeo box is that it was trying to make the game a lot faster than what it was. We still hit that hour and a half to hour and 15 mark on every play.
Yeah, I mean, it's we haven't played the other game for a long time. I can't remember honestly what besides the fact that it was long, I don't remember what else we didn't quite like. I do know that the villains didn't feel as powerful as the Rangers, and basically, once the Rangers got going, if you weren't fully built up, you were basically gone as a villain. These ones were a little bit better, but I don't know. I thought it was good. I mean, I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite way to spend an hour, but it was fun.
The other complaint we had was balance, and I still think the balance is not great across this game, because when you were playing as Queen Machina and I was playing as Zeo Ranger 4, you didn't seem to really be in the game. Like, you were doing okay, but once I got going, I just kept getting more and more going, and you just kept falling more and more behind. Well, when I was playing as General Venjix, there were some cool opportunities, and there was some stuff that I could have done to really try to take you out earlier on. I missed those opportunities, just didn't see them, and I definitely was in the game, but I took too long, and you just started getting going and got built up, which is definitely something that I think could be a problem for some people, because you can definitely see a huge swing. Now, we've only played the game with 2 players. I have heard different interpretations of the balance and how people feel about the game, depending on if they're playing it as a 2v1 or a 2v2 game.
Yeah, I mean, we've only ever played it as 2, but yeah, I mean, there's a couple new cards, a couple new mechanics. I think they're stronger. Do I think it's essential? No, personally, I don't.
I think a way to summarize it, and you can definitely hear more of our thoughts in our review that has already been released, and we're trying not to spoil the review too much, which is why this will probably be a little bit shorter of a segment, is that this game is still not quite what we want it to be. and we've been really enjoying the Renegade Game Studios deck builders. We have not yet played My Little Pony or Transformers as of this recording. Should be getting the Blade Transformers soon. But surprise, surprise, and this is talking to some friends of ours that have played all of them. The most popular one and the one that everyone says is the most fun is the G.I. Joe deck building game. The one that I think neither of us have the biggest connection to, but so far we had a great time with that game. And I remember putting it out in front of the table for Julie, and she's like, really, G.I. Joe? And she's like, this is fun. Just because of the mechanics and the way that it actually works. So, I think that's a good summary for this. Like this core box. I think it's probably my favorite core box. I would pick this one up over the original, because I do think it's got the potential to be a little bit faster, a little bit less heavy on the blocks. That was the other complaint, a lot of blocking in the previous game. But still not quite where I'd like the game to be. But we've got some expansions, and hopefully those will change some stuff up, and we'll be getting those to the table shortly. So on that note, we're going to remind you to keep playing games.
Hello, everybody. It's Robb and Anna Marie from the Meeple Dungeon.
Hello.
And we are back again recording for the Whatcha Been Playing Wednesdays podcast. And we have just got back, well, not just got back, but recently got back from Shucks 2022.
It was like 2 days ago, so it's pretty much just
yeah,
got
but
back.
this is a big deal that we were at Shucks in Vancouver a couple days ago.
Our first convention since COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty excited. It was.
Oh, yeah, it was so good.
Yes.
Yeah, we did and played and saw a lot of people there, and it was fantastic. And there was not just one game. We played a whole schwack of games there.
Yes.
One of the games that we played is a game that we had on our kind of list of games we had wanted to play for a long time, because I believe the game we're going to talk about here is from 2018.
You are correct.
Yeah, and this is a game that was high on our list to play that we just never got to, and it was sitting there in the library at Shucks. There was 2 copies of it, and we grabbed it. It was one of the first games that we played at Shucks on the Friday. We drove down Friday morning.
Yes.
And we got there at like noon.
Yeah.
So we were probably playing a game by like 12:30 or so. And one of the first games we played was this one. What game are we talking about, Anna Marie?
We are talking about War Chest. Mm-hmm. And that is designed by Trevor Benjamin and David Thompson, the first. Art by Brigitte Indelicato. And published by AEG, Alderac Entertainment Group.
Yes, so War Chest. This is a game that I had heard nothing but good things about. And it was a game that honestly hadn't really caught my radar early on when it first came out. I was like, okay, just judging by the artwork and things, and it just looked like a crate. It was like the artwork is that it's in a box. It's a chest,
it's
right?
It's a chest, Rob.
And it's called War Chest. Yeah, but it didn't have something that just like ran out and grabbed you. To play this game. But then I'd heard like, oh my goodness, everyone, War Chest over the last 4 years. And we had never got to play it. And David Thompson is one of my particularly favorite designers, and I'm sure you as well. But this game was fantastic.
My goodness.
We grabbed it and we played it, 2-player, obviously. And so just to give you a little backstory on what War Chest is, there's a little description here on their BGG. War Chest is not all new, but it is a bag building war game. At the start of the game, raise your banner, draft several various units into your army, which then you use to capture key points on the board. To succeed in War Chest, you must successfully manage not only your armies on the battlefield, but those that you're waiting to deploy. So this game is a bag builder.
Yep.
And you have a certain amount of tile.
Yeah.
What do you want to call them?
Yeah, I would call
chips.
them chips. Yeah, kind of like poker chips.
Yeah, poker chip style that would have different symbols on them.
Like a shield or a knight or a raven or
a bird,
things like that.
Whatever. And they all represent different types of units. And the board is laid out kind of in a hex kind of style, almost like a diamond I don't know the exact configuration. I can't remember because we don't own the game.
No.
But there's a configuration of hexes, and there's you on your side and me on my side, and we start with a couple chips on the board, and you're basically deciding on whether or not you want to
Move?
you're going to have 3 chips to work with every round.
Yeah, you pull 3 out of your bag.
You pull 3 out of your bag, and your bag is made up of a kind of a default amount of chips, and then in front of you, you're going to have kind of 4 different units.
You have
that you
4
can
chips
add
of
to.
each unit. 2 of each go into your bag to start the game, and then 2 of each stay out in front of you
that you can then
Recruit.
add to your bag using the recruitment, like you said, action. So, and every player kind of ends up with a different mishmash of these.
You all have different ones too. They're not the
units
same.
to use. Yeah, you had different units than I had. I had archers that could do these type of actions. You had archers that could do that type of action. So what you're doing is you are on your turn grabbing 3 chips out of your bag to begin with.
Yes.
And then you can use those chips in various ways. You can either place it out onto the board, onto one of the spots that you can basically spawn out new armies or units onto the board. Or you can spend those chips in a couple other different ways where you can spend it to...
You can put it upside down where it's unseen, and that's where it doesn't have to be related to what's on the board. Or you can spend it face up, which means it has to be related to one of the chips you already have on the board.
Yeah, exactly. So if you spend it face up, then you could move a chip with a matching symbol on it to a different location, or you could use that chip to attack another unit, or you could use that chip to capture a point of interest or whatever.
Like
and
a
then,
face down would allow you to like recruit.
Exactly.
So you spend a face down chip, and you get to pull one of the chips that are sitting in front of you off of
your choice.
Of your choice, and you get to put
and
it into
throw it into your bag for
yeah.
the next round.
Yeah.
So there's these really interesting decisions to make in this game where you are using these 3 chips. You're always pulling 3 chips, and you can use those chips however you'd like, whether or not you want to add it to the board if you can. And you can't have 2 of any type of unit on your board.
That's right.
So, like, you can't have an archer over here and then an archer over here of the same
Nope.
kind. You have to then use that chip, spend that chip for its value to manipulate the archer that's already on the board to do some attacking or moving or capturing or whatever it might be.
Things like that, yeah.
And then, you're constantly kind of evaluating what you have in your hand for that particular turn on what you can use and where they are on the board currently. And
you never know what you're going to pull, so you can't really plan for your next turn. You can have what you hope to do, but it's all...
there's lots of hoping.
Yeah, you're pulling out, and you got to work with what you have. It's
get what
very
you get.
interesting. And when you attack somebody, if your attack succeeds, which it
generally
will, it does.
Yep.
That person's chip that you attacked is out of the game.
Yeah, completely out of the game.
Completely
It's
out
not
of the
like
game.
it goes to a spot and then ends up back in your bag. So every time a unit dies,
It's one less you have, and it makes it very interesting for the bag building
so good.
aspect because
It's so good.
now you have less of that type of chip to pull out of your bag, and you got to switch your strategy for what you're doing. Very, very interesting game.
It's a ridiculously good 2-player game, and it's shameful that we took this long to play it.
we can't have everything.
No,
But,
I know, but this
yeah,
one, my goodness, if you like 2-player games,
it's very good.
This game is fantastic. War Chest from AEG.
Yeah.
So good.
So
We're on
good.
the hunt for our own copy of this game because it's that good. We need to add it to our collection.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it for this week. We're going to have a ton to talk about. We're going to have our next podcast episode recording in the next couple of days that's going to cover everything that we did at Shucks.
Yes.
So a full review of everything that we did there.
A bunch of games that we played.
Yeah. People we met, things we saw, games we played. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
So that'll be our next episode of the Meeple Dungeon Podcast, which I think is episode 45 coming
think you're
out.
right.
So stay tuned for that, and we will see you next week. Cheers.
See ya.
Hello, my name is Alex, and I write board game reviews over at meepleandmoose.com, and I'm here to talk to you about the games I played this week for Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday. Following up on last week's play of New York Zoo, we chose to return to one of Uwe Rosenberg's most popular game, Caverna, The Cave Farmers. Now, I'll profess all day long that I prefer Agricola, but I'll concede that Agricola can be a harsh game, garnering the nickname Misery Farm. Between failing to get an engine running, getting iced out of placing professions, and watching someone else get a game-breaking combo of cards that makes you feel grossly inadequate, I can see why some people prefer Caverna. In both Agricola and Caverna, you play as farmers trying to scratch a living from the land. You start with a tiny 2-room home and are tasked to grow crops, breed animals, and build structures to enhance your daily life. In Caverna, your player board is two-sided. On the left, you'll have your familiar farmland overgrown with trees, and on the right is your home mountain. The action selection board is huge and populated with resources every round. Players place one of their workers onto an action space and collect the resources or perform the action that's depicted, and then play will continue around the table until all players have placed all of their workers. At the end of a round, you pull your workers back, evaluate if there's a harvest or not, then reseed the board with resources and go again. One of the biggest changes in Caverna is the furnishing board. Instead of decks of cards and occupations and tools, now there's some 50-odd rooms that you can build in your mountain, once you hew the space in the rocks for your couch, that is. Each of these rooms will provide you with some kind of benefit. Some will let you house more workers, others will allow you to feed your children by feeding them rocks, and others will give you endgame points. Another big aspect to Caverna, although you can't ignore this aspect, is arming your dwarves and sending them out on adventures to pick up various goods. The bigger the axe, the better goods that you can acquire. Most of the rounds will conclude with a harvest phase, where you can pull one good off of your planted crops, and then you need to feed your family, 2 food per family member, and then, if you have 2 or more of an animal, they will produce a single offspring. I find Caverna to be more open and forgiving than Agricola, and to me that's a bit of a detriment. I really enjoy the tension and satisfaction of overcoming the challenge that is Misery Farm. Caverna is more deterministic, the buildings available are static, meaning you could chase the same strategy every time, with the only differences being the order in which the actions will come out every round, and your opponent's taking the resources that you were really hoping for, which, granted, those can be really big impacts on your game. Even though I've been harping on all the ways that I prefer Agricola over Caverna throughout this entire segment, I still really enjoy both. It's fun to get an engine running, and it's fun to see the ebb and flow of resources, and it's satisfying at the end when you tally up the points and marvel at how much you've managed to achieve, especially after the first 5 rounds. You really feel like you've achieved nothing and you'll never get ahead. That being said, here's a little story. The copy of Caverna that we played this week is owned by Bigfoot, who bought it secondhand. The ad had reported that it had only been played once, and the score pad in the box corroborated this claim. But man, the scores that the previous owners recorded were absolutely atrocious. They had negative 17 points due to unfilled farm spaces. Only 2 people managed to produce a third worker. The 5 players that played had managed to earn 10 to 15 points each. By contrast, our 3-player game, 2 players had produced 4 workers, while I managed to have 6. All but 2 spaces on all of our player boards were filled, and we had managed to have at least one of every animal. All of our scores were just under 80 points each. I weep for the miserable time the previous owners must have had. And that's all I played this week. If you want to read more of my board game reviews, you can find them on my blog, meepleandthemoose.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at MooseMeeple or on Instagram at meepleandthemoose. Have a happy Wednesday.
Hi everybody, this is David from the All Games New and Old YouTube channel, here with another segment of Whatcha Been Playing Wednesday. Forgive me if I sound a little weird maybe, I think I'm coming down to something, so I'm going to try to power through this though. So I recently on Twitter put up a poll for what one of my upcoming reviews should be, and the winner of that poll is Firefly Misbehavin', which is a new deck building game from Gale Force 9. So this last weekend I was able to try it. So this is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick a faction. So you could pick Niska, the Alliance, Ease Down, or Serenity. And each one of those factions has their own starting deck that's unique to them, and they have some other differences as well that I'll get to in a little bit. You're going to get your player board in front of you. One side of the player boards are the same for each player. The other one is unique to each faction, so they'll have different kind of restrictions because On those player boards are going to be spaces where you can put down characters, items, or assets. So depending on the faction you choose, you'll have a different number of each of those that you could possibly play down. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a certain number of power in your tableau. So each of the cards that you get and buy will have a power amount on there. So if you could play up enough power in your tableau to reach whatever the target is, depending on your player count, and you have that at the start of your turn, you win the game. So on your turn, you have 4 different actions you can do. So you could do one activation. Now that actually is comprised of a few other actions. So that you could play a card to your tableau. You could trigger a card on your tableau where you turn it sideways and use its ability. You could pick a fight. So if you want to pick a fight, you have to be able to play from your hand or from your tableau a card that has the fight symbol on it. And then there's a fight token that you're going to put on a card in one of the other players' tableaus. And so you're essentially fighting that card. It'll have a defense value at the top, and you will then add cards to the one you played down to build up your power enough that you can defeat that defense. But your opponent could also play down cards to add to that defense. And when you start that fight, you have to tell the person you're attacking what you're planning to do. You can either try to nab that card, which will let you put it into your own deck, or you're trying to simply make them discard it if it's not a card that you really want in your deck. So if you are the attacker and you win, you could do whichever one of those two things you picked. If you are the defender and you win, then that card stays right where it's at. And there's some other bonuses for winning a fight as well. So another activation is making a deal. Again, you're going to have to play out a card that has a deal icon. And what that'll let you do is that usually when you purchase a card, you're using influence, which is an amount on each of the cards. But when you make a deal, you're able to use both any influence you play out as well as credits, as well as possibly your verse tokens, which I'll also get to later. And that'll let you buy a card that is otherwise probably more expensive than usual. But when you buy it, you put it right into your hand, so you're able to use it pretty much right away. There are cards that your opponents can have that could stop a deal in its tracks. So if your deal gets stopped, you have to immediately do a recruitment action instead. So getting to that, you also do get 1 recruitment per turn. So in that case, you're going to use your influence to buy a card from the various marketplaces and put that into your discard pile. Some of the cards have symbols that represent each of the 4 factions, and if that one has a symbol that matches your faction, you can play one of your verse tokens to count as influence, which will make it a little cheaper for you. They try to keep it so that, like Kaylee, for instance, is cheaper for the Serenity crew to buy. So another possible action you have is verse acquisition. This is where you get the verse tokens I mentioned earlier. Every faction has a possibility of holding up to 6 verse tokens. And each faction has a card that tells them exactly how they have to do it. And every faction is a little different. So you have to kind of play to your faction's strengths to be able to get those, because they're pretty versatile and useful in a lot of ways. You can also spend your verse tokens, and that card will tell you the ways you can spend it as well. And that, too, can change depending on the faction that you've picked. Now, I want to talk about the marketplace that you buy your cards from a little bit, because it's a little different from other deck builders. There is one marketplace that has basically 3 areas of space, and that have their own deck and their own, 2 cards out that you can purchase. And, other than them being canonically from different parts of space, I don't know if there's a certain way they lean one or the other, because I've only played this game once. But there's also a supply market, and those are going to be stacks of, each stack is just all the same card. And that can change every time you play. So, there's some base setups that they recommend for certain kinds of games. There's also in the box scenarios, essentially, that you could play that are based on episodes or ones that they made up that they just feel fit the setting, and those will tell you different cards to start out with in there. The difference with the supply cards is when you buy them, they go into your discard as normal, but when you play them, instead of going back into your discard, they go back out into the marketplace again. So they're essentially one-time use cards unless you have something that lets you use them more than once. I know a while back there was a version of Legendary that had Firefly that has notoriously bad art. This one, the art is screen grabs from the show, maybe the movie too, I'm not sure about that. And usually I don't like that, but these actually look pretty nice. I will say that this game is more complicated than I expected it to be. I don't know if it's coming across in the things I'm saying. There's actually a lot going on here compared to a typical deck building game. And we actually caught various rules that we had gotten wrong after the fact that I've had to take notes on so I make sure we don't do that again. And part of that problem is I don't think the rule book is necessarily very well written, or at least it's not well laid out. It was really hard to go in and search for a specific rule when I wanted one, because the rules you need might be just some kind of like single sentence in, a sea of several paragraphs. So I don't completely love how the rule book is laid out. So far, I can't necessarily give a strong opinion on this game either way. I think it has potential to be great, but I'm not certain. It does seem a lot fightier and kind of meaner than I expected, because there's a lot of things you can do to block each other's actions. And I know some people hate that, and I just have to see how I feel about that in the case of this game. But it is going to be a review that's coming down the pipeline for us. So if you want to check out my channel, All Games New and Old, and subscribe, you'll see that one that pops up if you're curious about it. I know I'm curious to play a few more times and get a better feel for how this game actually works. Beyond just my YouTube channel, you can follow me on Twitter at All Games New and Old, or on TikTok at All Games New and Old. That's it for now. Hope to see you around the table soon.
Hey there, everybody. Norm here from the Cardboard Conjecture podcast and Bridge City Boardgamers here in Saskatoon. And I'm good, just quick touch base on what I played recently. I'm still getting over a cold, so I don't want to push it too hard. But had a awesome time playing live streaming with Ryan from Mr. Rao Gaming. We played Memoir 44 on Board Game Arena. And this is designed by Richard Borg and published by Days of Wonder. And check this out. This was published in 2004. So we're talking way back in the catalog of Days of Wonder. And Richard Borg, if that's familiar, same designer that came up with the system for Command and Colors. There's Ancients and there's other iterations of that. But Memoir 44, very cool game. I have the physical copy, and I've played it because I got it just before the pandemic. And but there's a third-party solo file on BGG that you can download if it's interesting for you. But Ryan and I played online, and it was awesome. And there's so many different scenarios in that game where you set up the board according to a scenario package that's given to you in the base game. And if you run through that, there are a lot of, I think Days of Wonder sponsored third-party designer kind of scenarios and campaigns that you can do. We played 3 games. We played one just to try it out because we've never played that game online. And then we played, and typically what you do is you play back-to-back, Axis and Allies. You take turns just to see what the balance is of how you played the game with both sides. And that was so much fun. Just to get to the root of it, it was such a fun game. And as we're talking, I mean, it's 2000. Like I said, it's 2004. So as far as like design years goes, there's a lot of designs that have developed on the shoulders of this architecture, right? But you can't diss a solid game, and this was a solid game. So how it works is you have 3 different zones in your field of play, and you're opposite each other on this combat area. And left to right, 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. And then you have a deck of cards that you get that have activations in different zones where you can have 1, 2, 3, or all in a certain zone, or one of each. And right there, it's pretty graphically explicative. And then there are event cards that are particular. There's there's an air raid. There's event cards, right? I can't. It's like I could try to recall what we played, but the cool part that I was going to get to is it's a common deck. So as you're pulling cards and playing cards, there's no uniqueness to either side. You both have the same strategic randomness advantages, if you want to call it. I mean, it's an even playing field, right? yeah, we had so much fun that we're gonna try to continue the like a once a month kind of campaign run of Memoir 44, and I am going to try to. I'm going to try to convince one of my family members that this is a cool game to play, so we could play it physically at home too. So, yeah, once again, Memoir 44, designed by Richard Borg, published by Days of Wonder. Fantastic game. I can't wait to play it more. And I can feel my voice tightening up a little bit here. So I'm going to take that opportunity to thank everybody for listening to what we have to say about the games we've been playing. And also thank you so much to the content creators who do such a great job on helping us spend more money on buying board games and probably, getting more shelving units. We should have a shelving unit episode. All right. Well, before I go, keep your stick on the ice and take care out there, eh?